Bon après-midi à tous. Bienvenue. Tungasuvit, Unusakut. Such a pleasure this afternoon to welcome Matt Patrice Brunet, who flew up from Montreal, from Ottawa, and is visiting us here at the Law Society in Iqaluit. And it is a windy day. So immigrate to Nunavut, navigating the icy waters of Canadian immigration for Nunavummiut in 2025 is the topic of our CLE event this afternoon. I just wanted to take a moment to remind our members that we are looking for feedback on our CLE programming, and we have been sending out a link to our survey. It's going up tomorrow again, and we'd love to hear all of your thoughts and comments and suggestions. And again, watch for our CLE events that are posted on our homepage at the same time. Med Brunet, if you would like to take a moment to introduce yourself a little bit and your areas of work, and it's such a delight to be able to welcome you to the Nunavut Bar and offering services in immigration law. And I know you also do other types of work, so why don't we take a minute to introduce yourself? And thank you for coming all the way to Iqaluit to do this CLE presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. Hi, everyone. I mean, what a wonderful welcome. Thank you, Nini, for this and for your whole team here. I'm turning to you, but I'm going to speak to the people here on the
please do.
On the camera. I'm an immigration lawyer. I also have a specialty in sports law, but we're going to talk about immigration today. I became a member of the bar in 1992, and believe it or not, it sounds funny in my mouth when I say that. But I've been a lawyer for more than 32 years and doing Canadian immigration right from the start. I'm also joined by my colleague Vincent Dubuc-Cusick, who may be assisting me on technical matters during the presentation if it's necessary. But I fell in love with Nunavut about a year and a half ago when I came here. And I thought I need to find a way to come back more often and to connect with the community. And I think that this is one of the first steps that I'm taking to connect with the community and to explain how the Canadian immigration scene works for here, for the Arctic, which is not that different for other regions in Canada. Of course, I practice in Montreal, but I'm cognizant of the immigration laws in Quebec, but also for the rest of Canada. I also want to point out that I've been very well hosted here by the Law Society of Nunavut, particularly with the gift that they gave me today, which is a seal, bow tie. And it's really, I really love it. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, we do appreciate, all the volunteers that help us deliver an interesting and wide range of CLE programming. So we like to offer a little something from Nunavut when our members take time to deliver and share their expertise and knowledge.
Thank you so much. It keeps me warm also in the neck.
Wonderful.
So just to finish off on my effect for Nunavut and for the Arctic region, this is not just lip service I'm paying for the statement, but I've also completed the process to become a full-fledged member of the Law Society of Nunavut, and I will actually become a member of the bar as of tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So I have my ceremony tomorrow. So I'm very proud of that, and it's going to be a very exciting moment for me. So this is my commitment and of that of my firm to the region. Of course, I'm going to be shuttling back and forth, but nowadays as this presentation can show, we can do a lot of things remotely without being present physically. So just to finish off on my profile and my background in Canadian immigration law, I've had a very wide career and range of expertise in individual immigration, also business immigration. We do a lot of work permits for companies, for their employees. We do a lot of family reunification, but we're also quite good at taking care of special cases, those involving humanitarian compassionate grounds. Also, as you may have seen or noticed, Immigration Canada sometimes issues some decisions that are questionable. So there's always a level of review at the federal court, and we've developed quite a reputation in successfully arguing cases before the federal court, or at least bringing them so that it gives us leverage so that the decision can be reviewed. I was also about 20 years ago president of the Quebec Immigration Lawyers Association for a number of years. And I returned to that association very, very happily just about a year ago. So I've become involved again in guiding policy with the federal government and also the government of Quebec, and sometimes criticizing them on the media. This is I probably get a call a week from the media, members of the media, to comment on immigration law. So I'm happy to do that. It's very fluid. It's been very fluid. There's some changes that are being announced without us being consulted, of course, that affect a lot of lives. So we're going to dive into this. We have a presentation that lasts for about 45 minutes, and then we're going to take some time for questions at the end of this. So let's get started. Yeah, there we go. So my firm, Patrice Brunet Avocat, is very simple. I didn't try to find a name that would be, that would attract more attention than what my parents gave me when I was born. So, so I have over 30 years of experience. We have 10 professionals at the firm. We have 3 lawyers right now and supporting staff with paralegals. I've handled thousands of applications, and we have hundreds of active clients right now. We have an internal process that is very fluid. And when you write to us, I mean, we'll answer within usually 24 hours, or if not faster. So, so we give a lot of attention and priority to putting ourselves in the shoes of the client. How do they feel? How can we fix it? How can we bring a solution if we can? So, like I said, we do work permits, permanent residence, federal court, etc. So why would you choose Nunavut to live here and to stay here? Well, there's an economic advantage, of course, in Nunavut. It's the highest median after-tax income in Canada, and it's a very fast-growing economy. From down south where I live, we don't hear about Nunavut so much, but I keep my ear to the ground, and I listen to these things, and this is extraordinary what you guys have done here and continue doing in the context of course, geographical adversity. And there's many visitors that come annually, and I hope there will be many more. It's only a 2-hour 45 flight from Ottawa. It's really just next door. Anyway, I'm one of your great ambassadors in Montreal, just so you know. So we're going to talk. I've divided the presentation into 2 sections, so permanent residence and temporary residence. So we'll get into that right now. So let's start with the permanent residence. So in Canada, and without getting into all the technicalities, one of the ways to acquire permanent residence is through the so there's you see some acronyms here. The CLB is a Canadian language benchmark. It's a test that you have to, if you Google it, you can register and you can do the test. It's a test that is standardized and that needs to be done in order to get started in any of the programs. So one of the first things that we tell our clients when they call us up and they say, "Can I immigrate to Canada?" We ask them, "Well, did you do your CLB? What's your CLB?" We need that, because when we build your profile into the system, we can't just pick a number or put an approximate number. Immigration Canada will also require the number of the certificate and the exact date when the test was done. So we need to enter that information in order to put you into the pool. The tier 0 or 1 occupations are the top level in terms of what training it needs. So the tier 0 and tier 1 are usually management occupations, or occupations that usually require a university degree. CLB5, so CLB7 is a high level of language. CLB5 is a lower level, as you can imagine. So that's also, and tier 2 and 3 are jobs that are jobs like supervisors and occupations that require more than 6 months on the job training. So under the Canadian Experience class, you need to, in order to be eligible under this, you need to have work experience of at least 1 year in Canada over the past 3 years in either the tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 roles. So those are, for that category, you need to comply with that requirement. Otherwise, we'll evaluate you under other requirements. So the other express entry program is the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So Canada needs people who are skilled. That's the way to come into Canada, so that they've brought the language skills threshold higher. So it has to be a minimum of CLB7. So if you have a CLB5 or 6, it's not good enough. It's got to be at least a 7. So you have to be fairly fluent in English. Or in French. It's one of the 2 languages in Canada that are evaluated at the same level. And you can't just be fresh out of school. You got to have at least 1 year of work experience over the past 10 years in a tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 occupation. And if you haven't completed your high school, tough luck, it doesn't work. You need to have at least high school education. And there's also additional points or bonus points available for post-secondary credentials. Under this program, a job offer from a Canadian employer is not required, but it gives you additional selection points, and we'll get into the selection points a little bit later in a further slide. All right, now one of the more well, it's used, but not as much as the other ones, but it may be interesting for Nunavut, is the skilled trades program. So this applies to technical trades, transportation officers, controllers, supervisors in natural resources, for example, in agriculture, maybe not so much agriculture here, but natural resources, manufacturing, and so on. I mean, the list is long. I'm not going to get into that because you'd probably be clicking off, but when we do the evaluation, those are the types of things that we evaluate. So because it's a skilled trades program, you can notice that the language skills threshold is lower, because if you're more in a hands-on job, you don't necessarily need to know how to write a 5-page essay. So you need to have a CLB5 for speaking, listening, CLB4 for reading, writing. So at least you need to have the basics of communication in either French or English. And of course, you need to have work experience. So in this category, it's 2 years in the past 5 years. And you need to have a job offer for full-time employment for 1 year, or a certificate of qualification in a skilled trade. So that's something that you would have to have from a Canadian employer, or certificate of qualification in skilled trade issued by Canadian or provincial authority. So if you're a welder in the Philippines, you can't just use that program if you're not recognized by a Canadian trades organization, or if you have a full-time employment offer for at least a year from a Canadian employer. So sometimes that's a way to get your certification, is that you get the full-time employment for 1 year, and you come as a support tradesperson to the employer, and then while you're in Canada, you'll complete your certification to have your qualification from the provincial body. So how does it work? What we do is that we put your name in a pool of candidates. That's how it works. So once we have all the information, we'll build your profile. We'll make sure we have all the documents, and then we'll put your profile in it. And then it's just like a big pool where lots of candidates are. And Immigration Canada will every other week or so. It's not consistent. It's not on a specific day. They will conduct invitation rounds. And those invitation rounds are actually invitations to apply for immigration. So once you're invited, of course, the road doesn't end there. You're not automatically accepted, but it means that aside from all your professional profile and your age and your language skills, and that won't be really evaluated again. They'll evaluate if you comply with all the other requirements, and you're pretty much on your road to getting permanent residence. So that's once you get invited, that's a very good step forward. So to give you an idea, the last round of invitation for the Canadian Experience class was on January 8th, just a couple of weeks ago. So they invited 1,350 people. And the lowest score of the CRS is the comprehensive ranking system, the CRS. So was set as 542. So what Immigration Canada does is that depending on how many invitations they want to send out, they'll look at how many people are in the pool and where do they set the number, the score at. So here it was 542. If they want more, they'll lower it to 525, then they'll reap a lot more. If they want to have less, then they'll bring it up to 575 or maybe 600. So, but we never know. So it's always a good thing. Of course, if you have 250 points, I wouldn't advise to move forward because it's not going to dip that low. I don't think it's going to dip that low. But if we see that the score is 542 and you have 500 points, or even 480, or even 450, put your name in there, because you never know. Sometimes Immigration Canada will do a big dip because they need to invite a lot of people. They want to open it up, and if you're there, you're there. If you're not, then you have to wait for the next time that it dips, and maybe a year, maybe 2 years later. For the program of French language proficiency, if you speak French, then you have a high level of being higher chance of being invited, because Immigration Canada, or the Minister of Immigration, Mr. Miller, has declared that they want to almost double the number of Francophone immigration outside of Quebec that they want to bring in. So that, outside Quebec means Ontario, it means Nunavut, it means BC, it means everywhere. So we particularly encourage people who don't, who are Francophones, who don't necessarily, maybe they'd like to come to Quebec, but they're also open and flexible to go elsewhere. So we say, well, why don't you use this system? It's a system that works well, that's predictable. The Quebec immigration system right now, I'm sorry to say, but it's very unpredictable, and it takes a lot of time to go through the process. It may take up to 3 or 4 years to get permanent residence, whereas you get permanent residence much faster outside of Quebec. So the French language proficiency is quite interesting, especially for North Africans and people who speak French. In November, there were a lot of invitations for healthcare occupations. Immigration Canada had targeted them, so a lot of invitations came out, and you can see that this CRS score dipped to 463, so it dipped well. And in March, about a year ago, transport occupations, there was 975. So again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds of what we do, but and each case is different. but it gives you an idea of how the program is managed by Immigration Canada. All right, so getting out of the express entry system, let's get into sponsorships. Sponsorships are quite interesting because, and here's a definition. So sponsorships, contrary to public opinion, many people think that Canadians can just sponsor their enlarged family. That's not the case. It used to be the case when I started my practice. You could sponsor your brother, you could sponsor your uncle, but they closed that in the early 1990s. And now the only people that you can sponsor is people vertically in your family who are vertical in your family. And your spouse, if you consider your spouse horizontal. So you can only sponsor your immediate family, which means, well, your minor kids, doesn't happen a lot because your minor kids usually always follow you, but it could happen. So your minor children, but your spouse. And what is a spouse? It's one of two things. It's either someone you're married with, or it's someone you have physically lived with for at least 12 months, 12 consecutive months over the past 2 years. And I've had cases where we've been creative and successfully creative, where I have some clients who, the Canadian is in Canada, and then the spouse is in the Netherlands. But they shuffle back and forth. They've been living together, but just not at the same address for the past 3 years. They're not married. So I tell it. So they say, "Well, I've heard that I can't sponsor my partner because we haven't been living at the same address for at least 12 months." But that's how it works. I'm an IT worker. I'm in Canada, and I can work from anywhere. And she's over in the Netherlands. Sometimes she comes to visit me. I mostly go to visit her. So then, when I ask her a question, when I ask the questions, and I say, "Well, over the last 12 months, like how much time have you spent apart?" And they go, "We're always together. Either I'm there or she's here. But I think over the past year, we spent maybe a week apart, like a few days." So I say, so that's living together. You don't have to share the same address. In today's society, people do that. It doesn't mean that they don't live together, just not at the same address. So we've successfully built sponsorship applications in that scenario. Of course, in most scenarios, people actually live together for the past 12 months. But in all cases, if you're married, then you can live apart. If you're married, you're still going to be eligible for sponsorship.
I was just going to quickly interject.
Yeah,
Say
sure.
immigration law. It's all these nuances and those fine prints.
It is. It
It
is. And I'm a lawyer, so I'm trained to read the law, read the regulations, and it's not what you hear. Find the loophole. No, it's what the legislator had in mind when they wrote the laws and the regulations, and what is the general concept. And is there any restriction against that concept? That's how my brain works. So the legislator said, well, we want people who generally spend all their time together. They're, common law spouses. But we don't want to tie it to a single physical address. If they wanted, they would have written it in the act, in the regulation. So that's my job. My job is to do that. And to find those creative solutions. And if there's a risk, my job is also to address that risk with my client and to say, well, this is a gray area. You want to go forward with it? I'm happy to do it, and we'll make the best case of it. If you don't want to go with it and you're risk adverse, that's fine too. I respect that. We can try in another direction. That's how I advise my clients. What you may have heard also is last week, the federal minister Miller, who's the Minister of Immigration, announced that they were suspending the spousal program for the parents, not the sponsorship program for the parents. So it's not big news, but I understand it may be disappointing for some people. So that was a program that was specifically addressed for permanent residents and Canadian citizens who want to sponsor their parents from abroad, let's say they're in India or they're elsewhere in China, and they're elderly and they want to bring them over as permanent residents. The program was wasn't working that well over the past few years, so that's why, you know, it's not a major shift in the policy, because over the past few years, since 2019, I think, and they suspended it for a couple of years during COVID, the parents would put in their name in a pool, and then they would conduct a draw. And the rate of success would be, the chance of success would be maybe 2, 3, 4%, that your parents would be drawn, and then they would be invited to apply for permanent residence. And then you would have to wait another year if your parents weren't drawn. So they suspended that program, and I don't think, well, it's not going to return anytime soon. But on the other side, if you want your parents to come to Canada, the Super Visa program still exists. And the Super Visa program allows your parents to come in to Canada and stay for up to 10 years without renewing the visa, or because as you know, when people come in on a visitor visa, they have to renew every 6 months. And after 2, 3 years, there's always a possibility Immigration Canada says go back home. But the Super Visa just does away with that uncertainty, and you can just stay for up to, your parents can just stay with you for 10 years. But they're as visitors, so they have to have their own health care. They can't work, but they can stay with their grandkids, and they can stay with you. So so that works. That still works, and I haven't heard anything that they're gonna dial down that program. All right, so that's sponsorship. Just a little note on the sponsorship. There's no, the only analysis here that government does is the relationship genuine, of course. Also, there's a financial analysis to make sure that the sponsor can support their spouse. In Quebec, there's an exception. There is no financial requirement or analysis that is done. No matter what the sponsor makes in terms of income, they're going to be accepted. But outside of Canada, there's a threshold. And the processing delays for the rest of Canada are quite acceptable. It's still long, but it takes about 12 months. For Quebec, though, the delays are horrible. They are over 3 years. So be very careful before you get into the program. And if you do have flexibility in terms of residence, consult with us, because it could mean a few years that you save in being reunited with your spouse, depending on the province of destination. All right, so that's what I wanted to say on sponsorship. There's well, it's not Nunavut, but it's still the Arctic. Other options in Northwest Territories. It's still, what I explained to you is still the same programs apply. But there's a PNP program, which is Provincial Nominee Program. Well, I know Northwestern Territory is not a province, but they still call it the PNP. So if you have, there's a business stream there, which doesn't exist in Nunavut. Hopefully there may be one that is developed, but there's a business stream for people who commit to investing and starting a business. They need to own at least a third of a Northwest Territory company and have the required financial needs and language competency. You know, if someone wants to open I don't know, second Black Heart Cafe in another town, this is a type of business that could be done in Nunavut, of course, but if in Nunavut couldn't be done, but if it's Northwestern Territories, it could be done. There has to be a minimum of $200,000 in Canadian in equity, or $100,000 in buying a business outside the corporate boundaries of Yellowknife. So if it's in Yellowknife, it's minimum 200,000. If it's outside Yellowknife, it's 100,000. Threshold is a little bit lower. Well, it's a lot of money, but when you're starting a business, it's not a lot of money to qualify. There's other requirements, but but I won't get into that because it may not apply to you. And this really, before we start working on this type of thing, there's a checklist that we're gonna do before we actually start the work to make sure that you qualify. All right, so we're approaching the end here with work permits. So work permits are very complex. This is our bread and butter. We do a lot of those, and I consider our team very much experts in this, and that's how companies call it. That's why companies call us and rely on our services, and employees as well. So I tried to make it simple by just in one slide here. By default, work permits need an LMIA, labor market impact assessment. Essentially, it's to show that there's limited supply of workers in that field for that position in that area. And so it justifies hiring that person because of their profile. So this is required for most jobs. And the challenge at in Nunavut is that the government is a big employer here, but they will not issue LMIAs. So and not just in Nunavut, but all governments in Canada they don't get into the LMIA process. So we need to find other solutions or other ways. For example, the next one, the International Mobility Program, if the employer is a government. For LMIAs, the low wage cutoff is set at $42 per hour. You may have heard a few months ago, the federal government announced that they would be suspending until June the reception of applications for LMIAs for low wages. In Montreal, the low wage is lower than that. I think it's $31.96 per hour. But in Nunavut, the low wage is set at $42 per hour. Except in some fields like health, in the health industry, and there's a few priority fields. We, of course, when we consult with clients, either employers or employees, we always turn our head first to the International Mobility Program before going with the LMIA. Why? Because the LMIA, it takes more time, more costly, and it's just more paperwork. If the person can qualify under the International Mobility Program, then we bypass the LMIA and we go straight to Immigration Canada asking for the approval of a work permit. It can be done either online, it could be done sometimes at a port of entry, like directly at the airport. Upon entering Canada. We used to be able to flagpole, being close to the border of Montreal. We would send our clients to the land port of entry, but they closed that off just before Christmas, just before New Year's. So that's not possible anymore. So under the IMP, what's interesting for francophones, s'il y a des francophones ici en ligne, is the C16 exemption. So that's for someone who has a CLB5 in French and who wants to, so he's got a fairly good level of French, but not necessarily the highest level. And they're going to hold a job in tier 0, 1, 2, or 3. So when you're 3, you're starting to get into more technical jobs. Then they can bypass the LMIA. And get a work permit. They need a job offer, of course. It's not an open work permit, but that's pretty much the criteria. And they get that work permit, and that's not very well known exemption in the program, but it's to encourage francophones to work outside of Quebec. This is not good for Quebec. It's for any other province than Quebec. And the kicker on that is that the job doesn't have to be in French. So someone who speaks French, someone who has a job offer in Canada in a tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 job can have a work permit without the necessity of having an LMIA. So that's one of the, but I have a great team. I mean, they found that one. Sometimes you have to fish through all the, there's about 50 exemptions. We always have to read and reread the law and this is the
fine
type of thing,
prints.
the fine prints, exactly.
Yes.
And this is the type of thing that we like to do. And there's another one, there's another exemption, it's a C20, it's reciprocity. So if we can show that the foreign worker, that giving him a work permit in Canada is consistent with Canadians working abroad in that same field, like let's say in the arts industry, choreographer. So if we bring in a choreographer from France, and we can show that we have Canadian choreographers going to France, going to China, going to the US, and there's opportunities for Canadians abroad, then you get a work permit without an LMIA. That's a C20. Hockey players, they get C20s all the time. Why? Because Canadians go play hockey south of the border. Well, we should give work permits for hockey players coming to play in Canada because there's reciprocity. So those files are fun because we bypass the LMIA and we argue on paper in front of the immigration officer, and usually that work permit is just issued at the port of entry at the border. So, wow. All right. So I reproduced my QR code. If you want to take a picture of that, that'll take you to our website. That's a nice picture of me. Unfortunately, I didn't have my seal bow tie at the time, but I'll probably take a picture eventually of that. And there's my email address. If you want to contact me directly, I'll be happy to answer your questions. You know, easy questions, I'm happy to answer quickly. If it's something that's a little bit more meaty, then we'll just book a consultation and take our time to go over your profile, your issues, or just have a general conversation. So this is the question period. I don't know who's managing it. Is it you, Santana, or
Yeah, if there's any questions that are put in the chat, I can definitely let you know. But we also just open the floor to anybody, so feel free to unmute and ask your question.
I was just gonna say, Santana, sorry, I'm speaking on the side, but I see there are comments in the chat room. Did we miss anything while Med Brunet was speaking?
No, just thanking the team for organizing it, and someone would love more black card cafes.
see Navdeep?
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I know all of you are very charged because it's afternoon and I'm from British Columbia. It's 9:40 a.m. I'm a lawyer here in Abbotsford. I'm licensed both in Ontario and BC. So when I stumbled on this information on LinkedIn, I was quite intrigued to join. And it's been wonderful way of learning. I do practice immigration law. So my question is to you, Petrus, for PNP programs, is it crucial to have a lawyer from Nunavut member, or the non-members can do the immigration files and do PNP programs? Or the file has to be run through one of your office or some other office?
No, there's no requirement in Canadian law for the requirement under the Immigration Act for authorized representatives is as follows. The person an individual can always self-represent in front of the courts or in front of the immigration system. You don't need a representative. But more and more immigration files are extremely complex, and decisions are taken without a chance to provide additional information or documents. So, and we get that all the time. We get clients coming to us all the time saying, well, maybe I was missing a document, but they didn't give me the opportunity to provide the document. Here's the negative answer and I have to restart the process. Well, that's how it works. So the authorized representatives are either members of a provincial bar. So I'm a member of the Quebec Bar. As of tomorrow, I'll also be a member of the Nunavut Bar, so I'll be a member of two bars. Navdeep, you're a member of the BC Bar, so you're fully habilitated to represent clients in front of Immigration Canada. And they don't require anything else. So I could represent a client in BC with my Quebec or Nunavut Bar membership. I have represented clients from all across Canada because it's a federal program.
Yeah, my question was regarding PNP because didn't have the clarity and I saw you. So I thought it's a good opportunity to speak to somebody who has such a,
Yeah.
extensive experience and been helping the clients in such a wonderful way.
Oh, the PNP program is a federal program as well. So the PNP program can be any lawyer can represent clients. Can also be a member of the consultants or regulated consultants. I have my personal opinion on the regulated consultants. I mean, they're recognized as representatives, so that's fine. But they don't go through the same training as lawyers do. We have to go to law school. We have to pass the bar. And regulated consultants only need to follow a course that lasts about a year. And that is very specific. So it's a different category. So I think the public should know that it's a different category of authorized representatives. It's not on the same level. Not to say that they're not good, but the consistency may not be the same.
I think I need to add a nuance just to be clear. I need to put my hat as the regulator is that if you do have a Nunavut client within an immigration process, even though it's governed by federal laws, you have to be a member of the Nunavut Bar or apply for the restricted appearance certificate. It's a matter of public protection. So if you're not called a Nunavut or you don't have your temporary license, you are not authorized to represent a Nunavut-based client. So just to bring that nuance,
Thank you for
it's about public protection because the person may not be vulnerable, but they can find themselves in a vulnerable position within an immigration process. So I just wanted to clarify that for the territories, our mobility agreement, right, is different than the southern jurisdiction. National mobility agreement for southern jurisdiction is different than territorial mobility agreement. So I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page.
Thank you for bringing that.
That's where I was kind of, like there's something I'm missing, right? I wanted to learn things. And even though I'm practice a little bit of immigration law from last 3 years, but I wanted to understand it in more depth. Like if you meet a client, you want to give them a good service.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful to meet everyone, and it's very nice CLE program.
Thank you very much, Navdeep.
If we don't have any more questions, what I'm going to suggest to Med Brunet is we're going to digest this really good overview of immigration program processes. And if there's any appetite to invite you again to dive a little bit deeper into some of these components, then we'd love to have you back to host, to dive a little bit deeper because immigration is, as we say, a lot of it is in fine prints, knowing the exemptions or knowing the different avenues, right, that arise. So maybe that is something that we can offer to the membership by contacting Santana or the general info account, and even we have the CLE email account, and I would invite the membership to share their thoughts if there's something that comes up after today's event.
All right.
Perfect.
Well,
Merci
thank you.
beaucoup,
Merci
Maître
beaucoup. Thank you, everyone.
To everyone. Thanks everyone for joining us. And I invite you again to sign up for other CLE events, complete the survey that's going to be sent out tomorrow as a final reminder. I look forward to seeing everyone. And you know what? I'm going to take a moment to wish everyone a happy new year. good health and a bit more moments of joy and laughter. You know, sometimes practicing law can be quite busy. So that's what I wish to everyone and to you as well, Maître Brunet.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Thank
the
you
rest
so
of your
much.
day, everyone. Merci. Nakome.